Thank you, Nicola. Okay, we'll make a start. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. We'll just go through a bit of housekeeping before we start. The meeting will be recorded. Fire exits, follow an officer. If you could put your phones on silent, I'd be grateful. And if you could all be respectful of each other and let everyone speak, and then you will get an opportunity to ask questions afterwards. I'll just go through, we have to start by doing we'll do the appointment of the chair, first of all.
I propose yourself. I propose Councillor Simon Carswell.
And I second that.
Thank you. I accept, so I'll stay as chair, or I'll start as chair. Apologies for absence. Thank you. Declarations of interest.
Shall I go first? Thank you, Chair. I do have a couple of businesses in Minehead, but neither of those businesses competes or complements the applicants. I am also a member of Minehead Town Council that's made a representation, but just for avoidance of any doubt, I sit here as a member of Somerset Council as the licensing committee and the licensing panel, much the same way I would do if I was sat on a planning committee at Somerset Council, or indeed sat on Exmoor National Park. I'm here strictly in that capacity. However, Chair, I do think there is a point I do need to address. If you're happy for me to address the applicant directly now.
Absolutely.
Mr. Wynne, good to see you. Just can you well, simple question, have we ever been friends?
If you can use your speaker, Mr. That's it, you just press the red button.
No, we haven't, Marcus.
And my recollection is last time that we probably had a conversation was about 1996.
It was over Hurricane Lily, I might recollect, and that's about the only conversation we've ever had.
So
You're gonna have to speak up a bit, Mr. Wynne. I don't you're quietly spoken.
And I would stress this is a public meeting, it's being broadcast online. I don't see any members of the press presence, but obviously, bear in mind this is a license application. If you were, or you, and so is me as well, were to lie in that would be committing fraud and would be a criminal offence. So again, have we ever been friends?
No, we haven't.
Thank you, Chair. I think that probably hopefully clears that matter up. And hopefully we'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I just wanted to say before we start properly that I've been on licensing as a vice chair and chair of licensing committees for the past 8 years. And in that time, I have never had an instance of the members of the subcommittee being challenged as to who should or should not sit on the subcommittee, either by members of the public or by applicants. And I must say, I was a bit disappointed by the conduct of a few of the objectors and also of some of the actions taken by the applicant with regard to this application, which does not put Minehead in a good light. I just wanted that put on record. Thank you. Right, we'll get going with the business. Oh, first of all, we have to authorise the chair of the meeting to agree the actions and sign the minutes following circulation to members of the subcommittee. I have a proposer for that.
Proposed.
Thank you. Okay, we have a set procedure to go through on subcommittees. Basically, everybody gets a chance to present their case, and then everybody else has a chance to ask questions of them. At the end of all that, we do a summing up where everybody goes around again. Then we will retire to consider our decision. We can hopefully make a decision today. And if we are able to do so, we will come back and disclose that decision afterwards. And you're welcome to stay or you can go, as any decision will be made in writing within 5 working days. And there is a right of appeal to the Magistrates' Court within 21 working days. Right, let's get started. Can I ask the licensing officer to present their report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I won't go into massive detail because of course, the report has been circulated. So I'll basically do a kind of a suppose, a potted summary. So the application to Cafe Bar 21 is a business in Minehead
Oh,
on the
stop.
avenue.
Can I just stop you a second? I did forget something. I forgot to introduce everybody. I'll go around the table. My name is Simon Carswell. I am chair of the licensing committee and I am a Somerset councillor for Street.
And my name is Councillor Tom Power. I'm the County Councillor for Wincanton and Bruton.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Marcus Gravis. I'm the division member for Dunster Division.
Thank you. I am Alex Kershaw-Moore. I'm one of the solicitors at Somerset Council and my role today is legal advisor to the panel. I'm being assisted by Gemma Davidson, who sits to my left, who is our trainee solicitor.
I'm Brad Fear. I'm a licensing officer for Somerset Council and I've been the primary officer dealing with the application for Bar 21.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Rendell and I am the licensing manager, just assisting Brad.
Thank you. We also have a couple of members of Democratic Services here, Claire and Lee at the back. And obviously we have the applicant and his cohort with him there and members of the public. And the responsible authority will ask you.
Morning, Chair. It's Edward Van Dyke. I'm with Environmental Health.
Thank you so much. Nicola, did you want to introduce yourself online?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just an observer today.
Oh, are you happy to take questions, Nicola, later on?
Yeah, absolutely, if needed.
Thank you. And Nicola is licensing officer for the police. Thank you. Okay, we'll start again. And would the licensing officer like to present their report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the application today being considered is for the variation of an existing premises licence held by Cafe Bar 21, which is a business based on the Avenue in Minehead. As I've already mentioned, they have an existing alcohol licence, premises licence for the sale of alcohol, both for consumption on and off the premises, which is valid from 7 a.m. till 11 p.m. I believe every day of the week. So essentially, the variation application has been put in to amend what they're currently allowed on the licence. So a number of things have been applied for. The first thing, which was a variation made at the request of the licensing authority and the police, which was that the business has a function room adjacent to its main I suppose, bar area, that it's been using for functions for some time under temporary event notices. And so I believe that licensing and police wanted to kind of have that added to the license so that they could use that function area appropriately. In addition to that, on the application submitted, which was on the 29th of January, the applicant also applied for a few other variations as well. So that included the addition of other activities that need a license for. So this would be in addition to their current allowance for the sale of alcohol, both on and off the premises. So they've requested for, and it should all be in the report as well, but I think I've got down as provision of plays, indoor sporting events, wrestling and boxing entertainments, live and recorded music, performances of dance, and late night refreshment. They're also looking to extend the licensable hours for all activities. In the original application, the extended hours would have been until 3 a.m. For all activities every day of the week. Following an agreed position from the police, which I'll go into into a minute, that's been amended slightly. So the application went out for consultation with responsible authorities and members of the public. Objections and representations were received during that period, which is why we're here today. I'll let Ed kind of talk more about the environmental health concerns when it comes to his term. But Nicola Cooper, who's on the line today from the police, did come to an agreed position with the applicant, so no representation was forthcoming from the police. And among that agreed position, there are a few amendments and additions to the application to essentially allay any concerns the police might have had. So that includes amending the terminal hours So from Sunday to Thursday, so this is the application we're now considering. From Sunday to Thursday, the police requested the terminal hour come back to 1 o'clock in the morning rather than 3 o'clock in the morning. So Friday and Saturday, it would remain as 3 o'clock in the morning. They've also they've also added that the applicant could have till 3 a.m. on non-standard timings such as Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and any Sunday that precedes a bank holiday. They've also put an allowance on there that the applicant can have 12 occasions of extending their opening hours till 3 o'clock in the morning, 12 occasions a year, as long as each of those occasions notification is submitted to the licensing authority and the police 14 days before the planned extension of opening hours. And in addition to that, the police also agreed 14, I think it was, conditions to be added to the license, which was under Appendix 5 of the report, just to address any potential issues of things like crime and disorder and the kind of things that the police would be interested in with any extension to the hours and activities. So that's the summary of the application. So really, I mean, whenever I come to any of these subcommittees, really, it's always the same thing, really, where all we say is that essentially the subcommittee has a decision to make today, which could potentially, there's mainly 3 avenues or outcomes that normally come from these. So the options available to the committee today are either one is to accept the application with the amendments from the police in place and the conditions and grant the license subject to that with no changes. The second possible outcome or avenue is to reject the application. And the third one is to grant the application and the changes subject to the changes that the police have already agreed and any additional changes that the committee feels are relevant and proportionate. So that could mean agreeing additional conditions to be added to the license. It could mean amending things like hours or licensable activities. So that's the third option available to you. And yeah, that's basically all from me. So thank you very much, Chair.
Questions of the licensing officer. I've just got a couple of a statement really and also a question. So boiling it down, it's basically looking to change the activities, the hours, and the licensed area.
Yes, that's correct.
And the one thing from the application I noticed was the existing license commences at 7 a.m., whereas on the application, the applicant has put in 9 a.m. I'll probably ask the applicant of this themselves in a minute, but has that been changed since the application?
So what is being considered is the application. What that is currently on the license is unaffected. So what would happen is if you were to decide to grant the application in full, if you like, then we would have slightly different hours for the function room that we would have in the remaining bit of the premises, which is already licensed.
Thank you, John. So that means 9 a.m. for the function room and 7 a.m. as existing. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the subcommittee for the licensing officer?
Thank you, Chair. Just to explain the 12 occasions. How would that work? Where the 12, where they can the applicant and the license as is at the moment, or as being applied for, should I say, can go till 3 o'clock. Could go on 3 o'clock till. This is the agreed position with the police, by the way. The suggestion is 3 o'clock on 12 occasions per year, with 14 days notice. How would you envisage that working? Is that just because that's not a tense notice, is it? That's one, how would that work? And then obviously they would still be allowed to apply for tense notices. For how many years is it again? Just remind me. Is it 28?
I think it's 15 maximum, as long as it's no more than 21 days overall a year for temporary notices. But to answer your question, yes, sorry. So the that kind of condition that's been recommended by the police, it does exist on a few other licenses. So because the wording of the condition was that it would be for 14 occasions with written notice, all we would expect would be an email to both the licensing department and to the police, or if we received it, we would presumably send on to them. And it would just say, we intend on such and such a date to extend our hours until such and such time, and as long as we had that recorded and we could say that was within the, over the 14 days, then yeah, that would be what we would expect.
Thank you, Chair. I've got one more, and apologies for this one, Brad. Revised guidance issued in February 2025. I was just looking at section 9.5 of that, where it talks about a representation may be considered to be vexatious if it appears to be intended to cause aggravation or annoyance, whether to a competitor or person without reasonable cause or justification. Did we reject? Were any representations rejected for this application?
So I understand there were a couple. So there was one, for example, we received which was anonymous. So we didn't accept that one because we can't accept them if they're anonymous. We did have a couple as well that weren't considered relevant because they didn't mention or make reference to the licensing objectives. So if someone makes a concern about just general, oh, we don't want this or whatever, then that's not accepted. It has to make reference to, okay, we perceive that there's going to be, for example, noise problems, therefore it's public nuisance, or there might be a potential for crime and disorder. So yeah, we did have a couple that were rejected either on the grounds that there was insufficient reference to the licensing objectives, or that they were, I think we only had one that was anonymous, but we couldn't accept it because we couldn't contact them, and because, we can't perceive it as a relevant representation if we don't know who the individual is.
Thank you.
Alex, do you have any questions? Does the applicant have any questions of the licensing officer?
When you were talking about the ones that you've actually deleted, or whatever the terminology you want to use, was that one where we crossed over about the racist remarks? Was that one taken out?
You're going to have to speak up, Mr. Wynne. You're quite quietly
The
spoken.
one covered with the racist remarks and about my my heritage and stuff, was that taken out? Was that one of the ones? Because I think that's really relevant to be taken out, or that's going to be added in.
So with that one, I think the committee will notice that one. I think it was representation number 45, I believe. We redacted comments made in it that may be perceived as vexatious or not relating to the licensing objective, and merely kept in that remarks that related directly to licensable concerns, essentially. So that one was redacted in various places.
Just like to confirm, I was unaware of those comments, Mr. Wynne, because they were redacted. And I would have preferred better use of paragraphing as well in that submission, but that's just a personal opinion. Is that all the questions you've got for the licensing officer?
I've got some statements to read out. Well,
We'll do that when we come to you presenting your case, I think. Does anybody else wish to ask any questions of the licensing officer? No? Great. Oh, is there the one from the back? Do you want to come up to the speaker there, sir, and just press the button? Just say who you are as well. That'd be great. That one there, that's the one.
Is that the one? Yeah. A couple of things, actually. First of all, Mr. Kravis, Councillor Kravis, stated that he had no relationship with the applicant.
We are at the moment asking questions of the licensing officer.
Didn't realise I couldn't ask a question earlier.
Right, you'll get a chance to ask questions
Okay, I'll
later.
come back to that later.
But the licensing officer at the moment is the only thing we're interested in.
It wasn't clear from the application whether the activities that are planned will take place within the building or outside, which has a material effect on the the amount of noise and disturbance in the area. And I'd like that to be clarified. For example, if you're talking about live wrestling or boxing, I wouldn't have thought that was possible to contain within what is a relatively small area. So perhaps we could have some clarification on that. The other thing I would raise is the level of sound that will come out of the building, even if it's insulated, and would that create a nuisance? I mean, we do get noise coming from bar 21. We have reported over the years. It may have toned down a bit recently, but overall we get quite a lot of noise and nuisance coming from bar 21, and the thought of that becoming extended into the evenings, and we're talking about still a number of days a year, is as far as we're concerned unacceptable.
Yeah, I'm afraid this is turning into a submission rather than a question. And also
I've
you're
asked the question now.
including areas that are really down to environmental health more than licensing, but I will let John answer. Sorry, so you didn't give your name.
I'm Stephen Martin.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I can answer the question in relation to whether the activities are indoors or outdoors. Appendix 2 of the report is the application. It does, for each of the forms of regulated entertainment, there is a question there where it asks the applicant to indicate if the activity is indoors, outdoors, or both. I will just run through that as a point of clarification. So I will just say this is as per the original application. I will ask Brad to give me a nudge or clarify perhaps if that was changed at all by the agreement that was made by the police. But in the original application, at least, for plays, that is indoors. Indoor sporting events, naturally indoors. Wrestling or boxing entertainment, indoors. Live music, indoors. Recorded music, indoors. Performances of dance, indoors. And I think that's it for regulated entertainment. Yeah, so I think that hopefully that clarifies that for the gentleman.
Yes, I
Thank
just
you,
want to add
John.
one thing. I've just been going through the police's conditions. There is actually one amendment which is pertinent to this. So the last condition that Nicola agreed with them and the applicant agreed was worded sporting events restricted to TV showings only, and there will be no live boxing or wrestling on the premises. So that activity isn't on there anymore. Sorry, I didn't clarify that earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you very much. Have we any other questions of the licensing officer? You will get an opportunity to speak again, Ms. Martin. I just wanted to say that I don't want to hear any more comments regarding Councillor Cravis. We've addressed that already, so we don't need to hear those again. Thank you. Okay, I'm now going to ask the applicant to present their case. Bring the microphone close to yourself, if it's going to be you, Mr. Wynne, and speak up.
Okay, I'm going to pass this over to Rosie Watts. She's going to read the statements of people that are not here and a small statement from myself, and then pass it around the table, if that's okay.
Okay, fine. Rosie. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just make a point of order? The statements that you want to read out, Miss Watts, are those that have already been submitted to the committee? Then I'm afraid you can't read them out unless you get permission of the chair. That's an additional written document that should have been presented as part of your response.
I respond to that. These statements are part of the responsible authorities rebuttal, or basically to enhance soundproofing and such like. It's not a statement from other parties.
Have they been submitted to the committee and the council prior to today?
No, I think that hasn't been done in the way that you're asking, because of the time restraints that we've been under regarding this. It's only been just over a week that we've actually had these, and to get everybody in situ to be able to put the package or the statements together has been a little bit convoluted. Obviously, people have got their working jobs to go to, that we've had to put things together like this.
Okay, Mr. Wynne, as I'm sure the licensing officers have told you, there was a deadline for making submissions to read out present something today that nobody has had a chance to see. The other persons haven't had a chance to see. The Environmental Protection Officer hasn't had a chance to see. That's not how this committee is meant to work. If you'd like to make an application to the chair to have that admitted, we can deal with that as a point of order now, and then we would need to see that written statement, and he would need to make that decision. or you can just go ahead on the basis of what you've already presented and anything you want to add yourselves to that.
I think we won't allow the submission. However, I'm sure that a lot of what you're going to say will be drawn out with the questions we ask as a subcommittee anyway. So hopefully that will address it. Is there anything else you wanted to do? As in, it's basically presenting your case, Mr. Wynne, as in, this is the application, this is why we feel it should be agreed, rather than further evidence.
Yes, a fair point. I mean, part of our submission is within that remit, basically about the soundproofing and such like. Obviously, to coordinate all of these things that the responsible authorities have put forward, we've actually had to rebut it in some way. So therefore, it's taken that time, as I've said. So if we can introduce it in the way that you've put forward, that'll be great for us.
Okay, thank you. Right, well, we'll move on to anybody who's got any questions of the applicant. Can I? Any questions? Right, I'm going to let Marcus ask some questions. I've got some questions as well, but I've got to get my head together around them. Okay.
That's right. So you're not saying anything as a submission. You're not stating your case before I ask any questions. Nothing else you want to add?
Sorry, Marcus. Obviously I've done anything like this before in the proceedings and how you're supposed to introduce our submissions and stuff. We have got statements ready that actually have been presented as rebuttals for things that are actually been sent as a representation from people that have concerns and such like. So the format is within my understanding before I come here. So I apologize for that. How I proceed is maybe needed to be prompted by the board today. Thank you.
Switch your microphone off. Yeah. Yeah. I suppose my questions, I suppose, are. I mean, initially you asked for 3 o'clock, 7 days a week. Since then, you reined that back after consultation with the police, and are now frantically looking for the police's represent. I'm now looking for the agreed position in the appendix. I'll find it somewhere. What was your reasons for reining that back from 3 o'clock, 7 days a week to 1 o'clock? Was it 1 o'clock 5 days a week and 3 o'clock 2 days a week?
Okay, I'm glad you brought that one up. The reason we put it in first of all, the 3 o'clock, is because we do wakes, funerals, parties, birthday parties and such like. And as you can appreciate, in this industry, people come, especially for a wedding and wake, come from all over the country. So as you can appreciate, people coming and then having to finish up at very early doors after traveling all that, we were our bookings were people would phone up, and then when we'd say we'd only have 11 o'clock license, would not return our calls, basically. So therefore we thought having the variation for people to be able to book the function room would have been more apt for us. But I think the troubles come, or the misunderstandings come, because when the papers printed our hours or our uplifting hours, they put it in such a way, it seemed like we're going to have live boxing, it was going to be a nightclub, it was going to be this, that and the other, which it doesn't have any bearing on what we actually said to the papers. So obviously they were hunting for a story, which makes me feel that that's probably why we got such a pushback at that time. So I can categorically assure anybody that's got any concerns about it being a nightclub, for one, it's too small. And two, me and my partner, Lorraine, are 62 years of age. And if you think that I'm going to be running a nightclub at my age, that's just not going to happen. It's just basically for weddings, occasional dance evenings and bands, That's why we felt to keep it in one area, which is in the middle of the building. So therefore you've got two external shops. The walls are like 4 foot thick. And we thought that was probably the best place to have it. So we wouldn't create any extra noise that could be deemed annoyance or break any of the 4 objectives.
Tom?
Thank you. Just discussing, you obviously do weddings, you know, funerals, etc. Just on average, throughout the year, how many times do you think on average that you will be going till about 3 o'clock in the morning? I know it's a difficult question to ask, but just on average.
Well, you've said it's a difficult question to ask. Well, I think tailoring it back to the weekends, just that those two, the Friday and the Saturday, give you an indication that we're not intending to run very often at that time. But again, to safeguard if it ever did happen that it became really successful, we are endeavoring to soundproof it to the point where there shouldn't be any troubles with it. So again, coming back to your question, can I say how many times? I'd like to think we could use it all the time for the 3 o'clock on the Saturday and the Friday, but the chances are it's just a small town, depending on how many weddings and funerals and such like and parties that people want. You know, I think the board's got to bear in mind there is nothing that in the town that actually is going to offer this service, and I think from the feedback that we've got, especially from online, when even with it was being misprinted, or let's put it that way, in the papers, the response was so overwhelmingly positive that people need something more than what's being offered, is self-evident. I know I'm going a little bit off track, but within that, I think that probably, if we sift through it, we could get the answer we needed.
Thank you. Any other questions, Tom? I've got a couple of questions, so I'll go before you, Marcus. A couple of quick ones. Who is the designated premises supervisor?
That will be myself.
Thank you. And it says about, I think in the, I don't know if it's a police submission or whatever, but they'd like you to have 1 security staff for each 100 people with a minimum of 2. What is the capacity of your premises?
Well, it's 450 for the original unit. That's my understanding. 499. Nicola might be able to tell us a little bit more about that. For some reason, the figures escape me. But I did have a visit from the fire officer at the time, and when we were talking about numbers, and because we've had bifolding doors around the premises, I know this might run contrary to the noise situation, but we're actually concentrating on the figures at the moment, that we could open the doors, and because the traveling distance between any one point is so many steps or so many meters, that our numbers are fairly large. But again, the original figure with the door shut, I think, is about 499.
Thank you. Just a couple of another quick one. I think one of the, or maybe more than one of the objectors was saying about broken glass around the premises on the pathways. Do you or have you considered using plastic reusable or biodegradable reusable utensil glasses?
Thank you for that question. When if you're not familiar with Minehead and its entertainment, let's call it entertainment, Butlins adult weekend breaks, we do use plastics when it gets busy, for those times. for the Euros, we use plastics. So events, I think, if this is granted, we would use plastics and disposables, or even beaker types, because you can get those now, which you wouldn't be able to get before. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you. Yes, you might wish to consider having a branded plastic glasses that can then be, I don't know, £1 refill or not refill, refund. Nice to have a £1 refill, a £1 refund when they're handed back in, because I know a lot of entertainment premises have that sort of idea. My final question before I go back to Marcus is, which you'll be pleased to hear this question, I think. What steps have you already taken or will be taking in relation to noise disturbance? I know the environmental health was going to speak, but that's the question I've got to ask.
Well, since we had what do you call it? On the last variation on the pool table area, it used to be the garages at the rear of the property. I had to do a Zoom meeting. For the variation on that, we've kept a diary, and which you've actually 2022, which is signed off by different people and actually signed off by myself and our door safe. So there's that. You can look that over if you would like to deliberate anything. That's full, comprehensive. What happened? What if anything happened? Every single day, even if nothing happened.
So basically, sorry, Chair, my name's Lorraine Pegler. I'm William's partner. So basically, since 2022, there were a lot of people saying regarding noise complaints. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with Minehead, but
I have actually had a burger and a pint of orange juice and lemonade at your premises probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And I did used to go to Minehead quite often, so I am familiar with that area of Minehead.
Okay, sorry. So, so basically, since that, we've kept a diary by our staff. So at the end of the night, what they tend to do is they'll pop in there that last order is 11 o'clock. Teal's taken out at 11 o'clock. We have a Sonos system inside, which the music's turned off at 11 o'clock or 11:15. Depending how many people are in there, and everything's recorded. And then a lot of the time, the staff would then make their way up to Wetherspoons so that they could have a late drink, and they would record any noise that they heard in the avenue. Past, obviously, they would get out, I would probably say about 11:30, so they would text me to say there's noise and there's music in the avenue. So we did this simply because we were hearing that we were causing noise complaints. So we did that, and as you can see, these diaries are old, and anybody's welcome to see them. So and also regarding the lane that you were referring to with broken glass, our flat is directly above by the side of that lane which you're referring to. And also you've got a lot of people that come out of the social club and use that lane. It's just not generally customers of Bar 21, because our license is 11 o'clock. They go straight uptown to wherever's open anyway. So just those couple of things that I wanted to raise. And also I am chair of Pub Watch and chair of Shop Watch, so I do work very closely. Vice chair, sorry, of Shop Watch, so I do work very closely. And going back to the representation of it being a toothless organisation, was quite upsetting, because it is voluntary and we put a lot of hard work and a lot of our time into this to keep our town safe. So just to put that out there. But thank you for listening.
Thank you. Just to go on from the noise thing, are you actually planning to do any work around, I don't know, installing some sort of soundproofing in the building?
So after,
This is the,
Ye-
report.
yes, so after our meeting with Mr. Van Dyke, we employed, Timothy Sherlock Brown, which from Blue Acoustics, and he came to the premises and put microphones and stuff. I don't understand it, but that's what he did. And we have got a report. Yeah, it was, I think it was sent back over to you guys. Yeah. So it is a work in progress. Obviously, you know, we want to be best practice. All our policies are spot on. We work very closely with Nicola and the other licensed premises that are actually on our Pub Watch group to keep our town safe. But I'll end there because I'm waffling on.
Okay, thank you very much. Marcus, you had some questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm looking at your current red line plan, as I like to call them, for your licensed premises. And obviously that goes all the way to the back of the premises and the area you've got at the back with the pool tables, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, we've not been talking about sound, et cetera, but I'll probably leave that till after the EHO has spoken. But with regard to, obviously, we have now deregulated entertainment, so up to the hours of 11 o'clock, you can have bands and things on and stuff like that. Have you ever had bands on? How many times have you done that? Have you had any complaints? Have they been successful? Blah, blah.
We have had, not, is it 9 10s? Or we've used 15 10s in the function room. And we've, as far as we're aware, licensing be able to tell you that, Nicola Cooper said that they've had no complaints, no disturbances. I think to the point where basically people didn't even know that we were actually putting on entertainment on. So if that's any indication that we're already quite well insulated, I'm not saying it's perfect because obviously it's an old building, but we are making strides to making it perfectly soundproof that it's acceptable.
Apologies, Chair, but I'd rather get them while I've got it in my head. And obviously now you've got your outside area at the rear, and obviously that's now going to extend according to the plan, or would extend if the license is granted, into the bit behind where you've got mobile catering and outside seating. How do you envisage, I mean, is that a daytime thing? Is that a special events thing? How do you envisage managing that?
So when the mobile catering, you're talking about the food court, Park Avenue food court. Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, I'm just looking at this plan here. But I think you've got your existing license, that's your new license for the extension area, then you've got your toilets. Yep. How do you envisage that being an extension of that? And how will it be managed and sound and etc. And will that?
Thank you for that, Marcus. Again, we are not intending to, over 11 o'clock period, unless specially requested, to use that area for any entertainment. So I think we've been requested to not use the front of the building, but to use the rear of the building for a smoking area, without music after 11 o'clock, a designated area, with CCTV cameras. We do have, how many do we have now? We have 26 cameras at the moment, and obviously extending the area, we'll have more. I think that would answer your question.
Thank you, Chair. I'll leave it for the time being, if that's okay, until see if anything crops up after we've had other representations.
Thank you. Does the legal officer have any questions?
Yes, Chair, I do. Mr. Wynne, just a couple of points of clarification, if you would. I would just like to clear up this issue about your opening hours. Because obviously you've heard what the licensing officer says. We've seen you've got two different opening hours on your license and on your application. I'm also aware that the police, although they said they've got no representation about an earlier start time, you know, they sort of said it would be good if everything was across the whole premises. So can you confirm for the committee what you are planning your open hour is going to be? Obviously,
Thank you for that. It's distinctly two premises. I know they've got one small door that's links for the function area, but we have been operating since 2016 under the 7 to 11 licensing. So we'd like to keep the 7, but only use the 9 in the function room. It's more of an overspill. And the reason being from the 7 is, again, back to the adult weekend breaks, and it seems like that seems to be the matter of contention with noise. We didn't start the party, we just joined in. I can only say that. And the 7 o'clock, people start to wander up. Witherspoons is open. We get open. It gets very busy. So I think for the 7, that one, and the 9 on the other one, I think what happened was when we filled the forms in, it was just put in a matter of course at 9 o'clock. But rather than change all the paperwork, we decided just keep the 7 for on the Cafe Bar 21. That's the original premises license, and just run with that. If that hopefully answers your question.
it does. Thank you. And then just one other thing, and I'm aware again we will hear from the Environmental Protection Officer in a minute. Obviously, you've seen the responses that the Environmental Protection team put together, and I noticed you said as a result of that you've got your noise acoustic expert out. Is your position that you accept what the Environmental Protection Officer is saying, or are you seeking to challenge that? I'm thinking particularly in his response, you'll have seen he talked about possible conditions if the licence were to be approved, and it would be helpful if you could say whether those are acceptable to you for the committee.
I think the wording is important. Obviously, challenge. I wouldn't like to challenge the responsible authority in regards to that. Working with them would be a more appropriate terminology. So to resolve any possible issues that we might come across. Obviously, we need a time lag to be able to get it right. What that period would be if we grant the license today, I think we could come to an understanding of that. Maybe not use the function room until such time it was acceptable. I'd like to work within that framework, rather than just given the decibels or leakage or like this, and that's the end of it, rather than introduce, which obviously I didn't realise, introduce what our measures are going to be and what we actually are putting in place with the what was their names again? Blue Acoustics. They seem to have a real good handle on it. I think that's yeah, okay.
Just one more follow on from that, Chair, if I can. Obviously, yeah, just to reassure you, the Blue Acoustic report, you did send that in last week, so the committee do have that, and they have had a look at it, but obviously it's quite a technical document. I think it's probably helpful if you could summarise what you've talked about. We're going to do things, we're planning things. Could you summarise what those are in a few words, without getting too technical?
It's technical for me, and I'm actually the one that's working on it. What we're doing is leaving it in the hands of our actual electrical engineer that we have on site, and we've been working with him for quite some time now. Because it's an old building, he's rewired the whole building. We put new wiring in. He's put the alarm system in. He's been absolutely fantastic. Now he's been working with Blue acoustics since we brought him in. But a shame, but he couldn't be here today to maybe answer that question. So to implement these things, again, if we had a little bit of a time lag where we could implement these things and get them sorted so everyone was happy, then possibly I could resolve anything that would do anything that would interrupt that flow. I mean, we're talking about things like double glazing, extra paneling on the front of the building, a smoking area. These are not the technical things, obviously, but these are the things that I've been asked for. How do we technically get there? Well, that's in the report. There is also an intermediate door whereby you go through one door and then another door, so there's no sound leakage. A double swinging door at the front, so again, no sound leakage. Making sure that our fire doors are not propped open, so there's sound leakages. Making sure that there's a double door or another door between the two buildings. There's another gateway to reduce the sound leakage. And also the other thing is, obviously, making this as sealed like a drum is going to get hot, which has been brought up. How ventilation now we've sort of, that's in the report. We think we've got that sorted as well. So if that helps, without being technical.
I think that is very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Do the licensing officers have any questions of the applicant? No? Anybody else wish to ask any questions of the applicant? Yes, if you'd like to come up, just state your name, press the button on the right to speak.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments. We live in Blenheim Road in one of the large row of Victorian houses, and your building's obviously designed and built by George Luttrell.
Sorry, can I just stop? I think all parties or other persons will get a chance to make statements.
Yes.
In a minute, but if you'd like to ask a question, that would be great.
I'm just wondering how much soundproofing you'd have to do, because believe me, it's the same construction as the building that I live in, and I can still hear neighbours on either side of me. So obviously with what you're proposing to do with the entertainment at night, I think it's going to be very hard to actually alleviate the problems of too much noise. So I don't know how you're going to do it, because yeah.
Can you just state your name? You didn't state your name.
Angela Martin.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Wynne, would you like to answer that?
Thank you, Mrs. Martin. I think with our expert, that's what we intend to achieve. If we can't do that, then obviously we won't be able to use the allocated area. That's what we're doing here today, and any concerns that that anybody have, we did have a coffee morning that to alleviate any concerns, and to be fair, you didn't turn up. Whatever reason that was for, that I could have maybe made a better presentation for you today, because I obviously didn't realise that I wasn't allowed to put evidence in. So we live above the premises, you know, and I don't want the leakage to be annoying for ourselves as well as anybody else.
Yeah, we don't want to get into a debate, really. You're going to get a chance to do your statement, so it's just strictly questions to the applicant at the moment rather than statements regarding. Mr. Martin, if you've got a question, please. Thank you.
Here's a question, I promise you. There has been a lot of questioning over how many people have actually complained. And I can tell you there have been lots of complaints, but for some reason they don't seem to get logged. And one of the reasons is probably because people phone the police. And I know that Gary, you phoned the police, it didn't get logged. They said, oh, it's not for us to do anything about it. So I think we do need someone that we can complain to, not that we want to complain, obviously, but if there are loud noises coming from bar 21, from the new bit or the old bit, come to that, I would like to know that when we speak to somebody, it's actually logged. And the next question is, who is going to deal with that? Who's going to police it? Is there going to be some sort of environmental officer who is going to enforce it and actually make sure that it doesn't carry on? Because it's not really fair on the people in Minehead, the residents of Minehead, to have to keep phoning up and logging it rather than having somebody externally who does that properly.
Right, thank you, Mr. Martin. That's not actually a question of the applicant. That's a question, I think, of the police or the environmental health. I didn't ask if you wanted to ask any questions of the environmental. Sorry. Edward, if you wanted to ask any, I keep forgetting you're there, sat there quietly in the corner. And but if you want to ask any questions of the applicant or even to clarify from what Mr. Martin said.
Not really, although the one thing has arisen, there's an acoustic expertise that's been employed. I don't think you've sent me any details of his work or of that, have you?
I think we can let you have a copy of that. Can you? Okay, so if Democratic Services could let Environmental Health have a copy of that report. Thank you. Yeah, it would help you. Thank you. Okay, I will bring Nicola in later, but not quite yet, because I think there was mention of the police there. Okay, we now move on to responsible authorities. As we know, the police have agreed a position with the applicant. However, Nicola, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything, especially in response to Mr. Martin's question.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't actually register to speak today, but I am happy to do so if that's required. If legal's happy for that, can you just clarify?
Yeah, I'm happy for you, Nicola. I think it will help. Yeah, carry on.
In response to Mr. Martin, anybody can request a log number when they call the police, but I am aware that the applicants are more than happy to give their personal phone numbers as a condition, which I think they were going to include in their opening statement. I think that's got lost up with they haven't had the opportunity to relay what they want to say and put that forward, because I think the word statement has got lost and they've not been allowed to speak. But I know that they are happy to put forward as a condition their personal phone number, so that if anybody was disturbed, they could ring bar 21 direct so that they could address those problems. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, Nicola. Did you want to say anything else?
Just to clarify that the premises has worked with us. They've agreed to any conditions, which I think addresses any problems that might arise. And they do a lot for the community. And I have no doubt that if there were issues following the grant, if it's granted of this application, that they would address it as a priority, because they really do not want to upset anyone in the community.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to ask any questions of Nicola? Marcus?
Hi, Nicola. It's a quick question on some of the conditions, actually. I noticed you've got a 30-minute wind down period after the last sale of alcohol. Would you envisage that being, if the licence was going to 3 o'clock, being 3:30, or you envisage that being 3 o'clock when the last, and actually just selling the alcohol at 2:30? Just for clarification on that, whether that should be to the applicant or not. The other question I suppose I had was, there'd be no wrestling and boxing to take place. And I just, sorry to have to put you on the spot like this. I just wondered why, apart from, I just wondered why that was, would that have been a big issue?
The police do have issues with live boxing and wrestling as a general response. And so the applicants have agreed not to do that. If they did want to do it as a one-off, obviously they could speak to us and apply for a temporary event notice so that it's properly resourced and discussed before any live or boxing. But that's not their intention. It was just TV viewings.
Thank you. That clarifies that for me.
Thank you, Marcus. Does anybody else have any questions of Nicola? No. Applicant? No. Any members of the public questions for the police particularly? Yes, Mr. Martin.
Yeah, it was sort of, I don't think the earlier question was completely answered. My question was, and how the level of sound is going to be monitored. I mean, we've got this arbitrary thing at the moment. I think it's too loud. Somebody else says it's not too loud. All I can tell you is that my wife gets pissed off at 10:30 on a Sunday night when she can hear stuff coming across the park. So is there going to be some kind of independent monitoring facility measuring the amount of sound that comes across from the avenue, not necessarily just from bar 21, could be the Hairy Dog? Is there going to be some way of controlling that, measuring it, so that then somebody can enforce it? Because otherwise it's just going round in circles, isn't it?
Thank you. I think that again is environmental health more than police, but John.
Thank you, Chair. Well, hopefully I can answer the question. So we're talking about a license and a license with conditions. Any issues arising from the license of activities, those matters can be reported to the council, to the licensing department. So that can be done by email. So for the benefit of everyone tuned in, that's environmentalhealth.west@somerset.gov.uk. You can report issues with noise or other issues to that email address. They will be logged as a service request and then followed up. Naturally, if there's a breach of license condition, then we can enforce that. We have an enforcement policy on our website for regulatory services, which sets out our approach to that, which is kind of a graduated approach. So it's not, straight into the courts. That's a last resort. So we can enforce it that way. If it is a noise issue, if it's not specifically dealt with by a particular condition, then that may then bring in the environmental health function. They have powers to address statutory nuisance, so regular nuisances. They have their own powers there. So there's also another sort of enforcement arm of the council that could address that. So yeah, there are a number of ways that members of the public can register complaints with the council, and we've got a number of functions that can obviously address that. And that might also be in collaboration with the police or another responsible authority as well.
Thank you, John. If everybody's okay, we'll move on. The fire have not, I know there are some people in their objections were concerned about fire hazards, but they haven't objected, the fire authority. We'll move on to the environmental health officer, Edward.
Would you like from?
God knows. I didn't know if you wanted to make any comments. You're down as a speaker, Edward, so I didn't know if you wanted to make any comments from the environmental health aspect.
Okay, it may help the committee if I sort of just give a broad appreciation of where we are in terms of noise control. Having had useful and helpful discussions with the applicant, I'm fairly confident that we understand I understand where they're coming from. They understand what I'm advising. So I hope there are no surprises in this. Fundamentally, the premises as it's currently constituted is not capable of containing sound from amplified entertainment at any time without causing a noise problem. Would be my comment. And the subject of this application was the function room extension of the licensable area, and advice has been given on soundproofing that. I think it's fair to say that the premises has a sort of a particular configuration aside from the function room, which involves a fair amount of outside space, and the inside space is what it is as well. And when it comes to the extension to 3 o'clock, I think the sound containing qualities of the whole premises is obviously very clearly to me needs to be addressed as well. So the fundamental issue is here that there is an awful lot of physical work to be done, but I think there are management questions which also need to be carefully thought about. For example, if you successfully soundproof the function room, and that's capable of being used till 3 o'clock, how much of the rest of the premises is capable of being used in that same way without also receiving attention? And quite a lot of that rest of the premises is pretty well open to air. So in broad terms, all these problems are solvable if you put enough resources into it, let's say. But there is a significant amount of work that you need to undertake when you go past 11 o'clock, in addition to what needs to be done already. And I think when you talk about ventilation works and lobbying, the double door when you have a lobby, those things may require planning permission as well. So it's quite a long process I think you have to go through until you've got established that your premises is going to contain sound sufficiently. It's not a simple matter to say a couple of months' time it'll all be done. If you need to get planning permission, that's a much longer process, isn't it? So under that sort of broad brush advice, I'm obviously happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you. Tom.
Thank you, Edward. Yeah, I'm looking at your submission. I'm looking at the supplementary one as well. That was 13th of March. First question, I suppose, is, so we talked about deregulated. You said about noise problems at any time. But of course, at the moment, they could put a band on till their current license. They could put a band on up to 11 o'clock at night. But if they did that, excuse me, if they did that and there were significant noise problems, one, I suppose the next step would be trying to work with the applicants. But then I suppose going forward, excuse me, going forward, the next step would be a noise abatement notice and them having to deal with that. Have you, in the sorry, but to your knowledge, I say we've had no complaints, or should I say, Somerset Council's had no complaints of noise. How would you envisage that working? And that's my first question. If I can come back to a second question.
Edward.
Sorry. Yeah.
Don't think your microphone's on.
Pressing button, it's gone red. Okay, sorry. Complaints coming to the local authority that will go to the licensing section, who will would naturally deal with it under the licensing situation, and that's a much more direct route than noise abatement initially. But the principle being the same, that we give advice, and we've already started to give advice. So from a point of view of, I'm told there's a band playing, I'd be pretty confident that that was going to cause a noise problem from my current knowledge. So you do already advance things a little bit. You can go twin track and start serving abatement notices for noise, but if the license regulation is going to kick in before that, it's an option, if you like. I think there are a couple of things I haven't mentioned that would definitely bear ruminating on also. Customer noise outside becomes increasingly a problem as you go past midnight. As I understand it, the current configuration is that the rear area has the toilet block, so people have to go outside to go to the toilet block. And therefore, sound is an issue after midnight with people outside. The other thing is we've done a sort of rough and ready sound test, playing music inside and seeing how music leaks out, and the whole premises is very leaky as currently constituted. So there's a lot of work that's needed there, without a doubt. That's so the presumptions, if loud music was reported, would be fairly heavily against the premises at the moment, I'd have to say, to be fair, and that's cut and dried.
Thank you. I've got another question as well. Of course, we could always review the license first as well before we went down the noise abatement notice, I suppose, which would be an option for anyone at a later date. On your initial submission, and I'm just looking for here, I think you mentioned the flats upstairs. But yeah, again, I mean, I'm trying to hark back to the many times we've had licensing training, and they've talked about we shouldn't really take in things that may happen, although we can take into account hearsay. It gets a bit complicated. So that may happen, and obviously you're saying with the flats upstairs is more than likely to happen. But then have there ever been any complaints from the flats above? And by means, I mean, I know the applicant said they live now. I don't know if you actually live in one of the flats or do you live in all the flats? So I don't know. And is that actually relevant?
No, there have been no complaints getting to environmental health in recent times. Happy to say that. However, in the sound test, I was up there in the flats, or some areas of the flats above. There are 2 stories there, and while we were playing music downstairs in the hallway on the first level of flats, the sound was clearly coming through, and I've got no doubt at all that would be a problem. On the very top floor, in another flat where a gentleman let me come in and make an assessment, the levels were quite low. And at that point, it wasn't a problem. So you'd need to investigate the performance of the whole building in all the flats to be sure. I've got a strong indication, though, that there was a problem there with the music that was being played.
Again, I mean, that's where I get back to. There could be a problem, or likely is a problem, but unless there's actual complaint that is a problem, it's not a problem. Does that make sense? I'm not being pedantic. I'm just trying to get my head around that's being suddenly in the equation when I've not seen any representations for anybody who I think that I wouldn't know anymore.
I can't comment on the nature of events that have taken place. I don't know. I was simply there doing a sound test, playing the music at a typical volume, and noticing what was coming up through the floor, and it was significant. And just to be clear, it would have been a statutory nuisance if it had been in a flat at that point, at any time of day.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm okay for a minute.
Tom, did you have a question?
Yeah, it was just clarifying. I think I just might have missed it. Did you say that they have had no complaints at all in the time that they've had this premises to EHO at all about a noise complaint?
not that have come to environmental health, other than I think matters around the license here in the last number of months. I believe that's correct, yeah.
Oh, Councillor Power, just as, if I may, as a point of clarification, at paragraph 3.8 of Brad's report, he has set out some complaints that were made and received by licensing and how those finished up as well. So that may help you.
Thank you, John. Can I just ask, Edward, in the appendix we've got here, you set out various things. What conditions would you be looking for on the license if it was granted? Because it's quite onerous, everything you've put there about timings and whatever. And also, what sort of timescales are you talking about with getting works done or allowing the applicant time to get the works done?
Chair, my email of the 8th of March listed a set of potential conditions there.
Is that the one starting? No events with music and amplified sound to take place. Okay, so the attachment to times of operation, that is just a recommendation to the applicant, or is that's not part of the conditions you're not proposing?
That's part of the advice in the conversation that we've had over time.
Okay, so that's part of the advice, not necessarily conditions. So the conditions would be the ones in the original email.
So I'm pressing all the time. Sorry, just to be clear, the timescales and the works cover fabric. I do think it's important to continue to recognise that the management is as important, and where you put people outside at what times is absolutely critical. And so there are two elements to this. There's the fabric and there's the management side.
Thank you. Do you want another one?
Apologies, everyone, but it's best to ask them now and get it right, and then rather than having all sorts of licenses reviewed in the future. You talk about the noise management plan, etc. Now, obviously, I assume the applicants will put that together with yourselves, etc. Who has the final decision on whether that noise management plan is acceptable? I mean, because obviously, is that delegated down to yourselves? And then what then happens if you don't meet an agreement? Do we end up back here?
My understanding of a typical condition would be that the noise management plan would be subject to approval by, and that would be the condition. Therefore, if the local authority could not approve it, then the license wouldn't be valid.
Thank you.
Alex, do you have any questions? John?
No, thank you, Chair.
Does the applicant have any questions? Yeah, Mr. Wynne.
Yeah, I think if, sorry, I really forget, Edward. I think if you had the management plan from Tim, the Blue Acoustics, I think he's outlined all of the decibels for the area and how we can actually keep within the recommendations, or at least the decibels that you've recommended. So that I think would cover everything that you've said today. Obviously, outside management, we have got the CCTV. We have a frontline license to have, well, Lorraine does, which is the only one in town. apart from Butlins, where we do have our own security team, which for an event such as what we're proposing here. So to keep the noise levels down to an acceptable level. I think people talking when this might be needed to be addressed to the board here is because yourselves don't live in Minehead. There is quite an expanse of an area behind Cafe Bar 21, which is the park. As you face the building, so the left hand side of it is the job centre, which is a 3-story building. And to the right, there is another building, which is a Fox's Hotel, which is in the same industry. So, and in the front of the building, there is a pub called the Hairy Dog. Well, it's been in existence since 80s, 90s now. And they have a 3 o'clock license. So I think with the management team that we do have in place, and with also the guidance from Blue Acoustics, I'm sorry to keep forgetting that name, I think we could possibly get to the bottom of it and tie it up.
Thank you. I think it might be a good idea to have a 15-minute adjournment, just so Edward can have a look at the Blue Acoustics report. To be fair, so we'll have a 15 minutes comfort break. If we could be back here, ready to start at 1:45. Thank you. Right, we'll recommence. We'll go to Edward. I don't think he's had full time to digest the whole report, but Edward, do you want to make any brief comments?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Chair. Yes, well, but obviously a bit of a skim through there. I would say there's a couple of things really. The report looks principally at the the function room. You have 2 halves to the piece really, the function room and the main bar area as existing now. The rest of the premises. I think there's a little bit more work needed to be done on the customers outside in the existing, outside behind the existing bar area. We've got smokers modelled at the smoking shelter to the rear of the function room. At the rear, next to that smoking shelter area, you've also got the existing outside seating area. So there's a little bit more there. The report is overall the sort of thing you want to see. I want to look at the detail from 10-minute skim that I've had the opportunity for, but it has the sort of thing you'd want to see. There are some significant things which still need to be developed in terms of a finalised noise management plan. For example, the lobbies clearly, the report demonstrates clearly have quite a big job to do. When I say lobbies, it's a double set of doors with some sort of corridor in between, so that somebody going through it will have a closed door at either at one end or the other, so that you always have an effective seal. Now that's not an insignificant thing. It can't be a thing that takes up a meter. It has to be significant, and you need lobbied doors possibly on the internal door to the rest of the bar area, certainly front and potentially front, and certainly at the back, where you're going to have an awful lot of traffic to the smoking and toilet area. So those are significant practical issues, and again, as with the extract system, which is alluded to here but no details, might be subject to planning permission. So a significant bit of work there.
Thank you very much. Sally, do you want to turn your camera off? Don't seem to get any response from her. There we go. Wow, great. Do you have any more questions for the Environmental Health Officer before we move on? No, thank you very much, Edward. Right, we will now go on to the other persons, is Mr. Hibbert here? Gary, would you like to come up and speak? No, okay, that's fine. Thank you so much. Mr. Martin, would you like to come up and say something? Yes.
Yeah, the point I made earlier, and I'll say it again, I just don't think it's for the residents to have to police the amount of noise that's coming from bar 21, Airy Dog, wherever it's coming from. I think it needs to be monitored by somebody independent. And I would like to know what action will be taken if whatever those levels are exceeded. And I'd like to know what the strategy is to do that. You've asked the question about things taking place outside of the building. So my understanding is that none of these activities identified will be outside of the new part of the building, and that we're going to have adequate sound insulation to make sure that nuisance noise doesn't come outside. I mean, you're probably aware, I mean, I've read through all of those letters. I don't know half the people who've complained, so there's nothing that's been orchestrated here. People have written on their own volition. But it's pretty clear there's a very strong or strong resistance to these proposals. And that if this application is to be approved, these safeguards do need to be put in place. And I think that's pretty much it. As I'm not allowed to ask the question of the councillor to your right, your left.
No.
Okay, well, I shall raise that in a separate letter to the leader of Somerset Council.
I think we've already covered that, Mr. Martin, so
Well,
I don't
you
think you
didn't-
need
I
to
didn't get
go.
a chance to ask
By
the
all means,
question.
you are welcome to write to the leader of the
Well, we will
council.
do that. I will do that personally.
Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Martin? Tom?
It's just, I think, I know you raised it just now, you're saying that, no, it's not probably just this area that is causing the noise complaints, because I think you said the Hair of the Dog, I think that's the pub that's next door.
There are other establishments in the avenue.
Yeah.
My feeling is, and I've walked up and down there, so I've done my own bit of research, is that the bulk of it is coming, or has been coming from bar 21. We have noticed the volume's been turned down a bit recently, maybe in anticipation of this meeting. I don't know. You've got the Sugar Cafe on the other side of the employment office, who make the most horrendous amount of noise, and some of the language coming out of there is absolutely disgusting. That needs to be dealt with. But generally, the avenue is noisy. Now, I'm not trying to stop people having a good time. We have Butlins adult weekends pretty much every other weekend now, it seems to me. And as a result of that, they're bringing in loads of very, very young guys, girls who just want to get tanked up. They leave Butlins, they walk up the seafront, up the avenue, have a few up at the Wetherspoons, nice and cheap, and then work their way down. And then they eventually get back to Butlins. And the amount of nuisance they cause, I've watched them pissing behind trees, bad language, and in the summer months, it becomes a no-go area.
Mr. Martin, sorry, I am going to stop you. This committee is not here to discuss or consider bad behaviour, antisocial behaviour from people
Okay,
coming from
take the
Butlins.
point, but if I don't say it now, it never gets listened to, does it?
Well, I'm afraid you can't say it. That's the
Well, I've
point.
said it now, so
This is
I'll
just
shut up.
about the licence for bar 21. What other people from other premises might be doing is not a matter for this
No,
committee.
I'm actually defending the applicant here because it's not just one establishment, it's a general.
Right, and
Right.
I would ask you, I'm sure they appreciate that, but I would ask you please to direct your submissions to your concerns about this application.
I've made
and this
those earlier.
premises. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Anybody else got any questions of Mr. Martin? Marcus?
Thank you. I'm not sure whether Tom had asked this anyway beforehand. You talked a lot about sound coming from bar 21, and then you've just mentioned, I think you said then you put or wherever it's coming from. So here's a question. I mean, the question, I think you then talked about sugar and the sound coming from there being horrendous. I know we're not talking about the application, but I suppose it's relevant because have you ever made any complaints to anyone about the sound in sugar? Have you ever, and how do you know that the sound that you're hearing from, which you think you're hearing from bar 21, isn't actually coming? Now, can I finish? Can I finish my question?
Can we not talk over
Thank
each
you.
other? Yeah. Well,
Let's do anything. Yeah, I mean, not only have you got bar 21, you've also, and at night, and I don't know if you've been walking down the avenue at night or not. What about, I think the social club's got a large outside area that backs onto Blenheim Gardens, and actually it's probably by line of sight, probably 10 yards closer. I just want to know, there's lots of allegations being made about one premises. How do you know which premises that sound is coming from, and what evidence?
I've walked down the avenue. I know where the sound's coming from. I haven't said it's exclusively bar 21, and I'm aware of the social club, but predominantly the noise has been bar 21 in the past. We're concerned that this application will only raise the ante. And as my wife will tell you, she's a very light sleeper, and there's nothing worse than getting woken up 10:30, 11 o'clock at night with the sort of sounds that we get coming across. It's not just music, it's shouting, it's swearing, it's all sorts of stuff.
okay. I think we'll draw that to close. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Angela Martin, did you want to say anything?
This one works, I think. It's not working. No, I think all I want to say overall is, I mean, I've got nothing against bar 21 with, your restaurant and what you do there. And I know I haven't been in and eaten there or had a drink, but some of my friends have been there and you've been highly recommended. And I think actually, because of the building, and obviously it would take a lot of work to get to a certain state where you can do, if you're granted the license, all the other activities, I would say carry on with what you're good at, which is the restaurant side and the drinking, and actually it won't cause problems for anybody, won't have the noise problem, and it won't upset, the residents of Minehead. So that's all I can say. I mean, it's trying to turn a building into something that it wasn't built for. That is the problem with it. And it's your business. You decide what you want to do. But I think it's going to cost an awful lot of money to get it to a reasonable state. And you're probably better just continuing with what you're doing with the restaurant area, because people are giving good recommendations. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you very much, Angela. Does anybody have any questions of Angela before she disappears? No? Okay. That's all right. That's okay, Angela. That's okay. Next we got Linda Barham Stanley. Oh, you're already in position, Linda. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Firstly, I am obviously concerned about the noise, but I'm also concerned about the people accessing the car park behind bar 21. Will there be enough CCTV cameras there to protect people? It's a residential area for the elderly, residential homes. They need to know that there's some security there, and also stopping people getting in to the Blenheim Gardens from the back there, because that again will cause problems. We do already have a couple of tramps, or they were last summer anyway, living there, but that's a concern for the general safety of the public. But also, if you're going to have weddings and things there, and you're going to have people arriving, no bride is going to want to get out in a car park and walk down that dirty alleyway. So, how is that going to help? And what about children running out onto the road when they're at these parties? Because a lot are unsupervised. So that's my main concerns.
Thank you, Linda. Does anybody have any questions of Linda? No. Thank you very much for your time and for your comments. If you've got a question, Linda, rather than comment, you can do that later, Mr. Wynne. Now I'd like to move on to, I'm not sure who it's going to be. It might be all three, or it might be one of three. Craig Palmer, Anne Lawton, or Ben Parker of Minehead Minehead Town Council. Are they online or in the room?
I'm online, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Just for clarity, are you speaking as a councillor, an individual, or for the whole council?
I'm speaking on behalf of the whole council.
Can you stick your camera on as well, Mr. Palmer, just so we can see you?
Yep, I can do that.
Super, thank you very much. Carry on.
Minehead Town Council's original objection was to the 3 o'clock AM closing time for 7 days a week. That's now obviously being looked at as something different. However, Minehead Town Council would still like to see that the closing time should be more in line with other premises in the avenue, which at the moment, the latest that any of those open on Sunday through to Thursday is 30 minutes past midnight, which we feel would be a fair and equitable time for R21 to open, as they've mentioned in the past that they wish for the Town Council to be fair and equitable when dealing with licensing applications. Of also of note in the agenda item that complaints have been made and investigated with regards to noise. There were 2 in 2023, for example. What wasn't mentioned in that report was whether, or the apparent lack of live or recorded music being on the current licence. So can it be confirmed by somebody that all of the music events that have been held over the last few years have actually been held on temporary event notices? One or couple more points. One is that if granted, we do feel that 12 extra events for a year is excessive, especially as Mr. Wynne has already said that he's not sure how many events that he needs to hold. So we're thinking that maybe 6 would be more acceptable. And the final point is that the recommendation from Environmental Health is that no events with music or amplified sound should take place before a noise impact assessment and a noise management plan. Does this also cover temporary event notices as well? So if there's an application for a temporary event notice before this license is granted, would that also include the lack of amplified sound? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer, and thank you for being so brief. John, did you want to comment on?
Yeah, as a point of clarification on the final question there around temporary event notices, well, should the subcommittee feel it's appropriate to grant the variation with that condition, then that it is just the licence of activities that take place under authorisation of the premises licence, which would be subject to that condition. So by default, temporary event notices would not be subject to the same conditions. That is, unless there were an objection to the temporary event notice from either the police and or environmental health, and it was agreed that such conditions should also apply to that temporary event notice.
Thank you. And I think there was a question there for Mr. Wynne, sort of with regard to the TENS, the events you've held, have they all been subject to TENS, or have you had any without the TENS?
Not past the licensing permissions, which is from the 7 to 11, but any events after that time we've done on TENS, and as far as we're aware, no complaints.
Thank you so much. Any other questions for Councillor Palmer? Yes. No?
No, I'll go then. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Craig. I'm just looking at the original comment, objection. And I assume that was made by the relevant committee, etc. There's a point in there you made that about existing license violations, as evidenced by publicly documented complaints. And I mean, that's quite a bold statement to say. I mean, I know you're town council and you're just a consultee, but obviously as a town council, people obviously think you a town council, so maybe it's given more weight than whether it should be or not. It's not for me to say. But that's quite a bold statement to make, an accusation to make for the town council. What evidence have you got about this? You say publicly documented. What were those violations? Were they ever dealt with? And were they ever upheld? I think I'll say that. I don't know. There's something here about a scrutiny committee, but I don't know why a scrutiny committee would be looking at a licensing application. That's slightly beyond me. But anyway, I'd like to come back again after this.
Thank
Okay.
you, Palmer.
I can answer the one about the current license. From what we can see, is for alcohol on and off sales, but doesn't include any playing of live or recorded music. And that was what that part was about. The scrutiny committee was looking into an application with regards to a different premises. However, at that committee, there were several complaints about loud music coming from Bar 21, which was what that was referenced to.
Thank you.
I haven't finished yet. No, yeah, absolutely. I can't find it. I've lost it. I was looking at it earlier. I've even written down what page it was on, but I can't find it. Obviously, well, no, looking straight at it actually. So obviously, your committee's made a formal submission there, but then a couple of weeks later, you put in another one. How was that? How did that? What's the word I'm looking for? Well, how did that representation come about? Because is that a representation of Minehead Town Council and the official committee that it was meant to be made by? Or how did suddenly you go from accusing them of licensing violations and all sorts of things on one representation to then saying, well, actually, maybe if they had a license to 2:30, that would be okay. That's quite a big rollback, I would have said. And how did that second submission come about, bearing in mind that's from Minehead Town Council as well?
That was in response to a document that was sent to Minehead Town Council by the licensing officer with regards to, it was a response to that letter that was sent in by the applicant to the licensing officer.
Before we carry on, Marcus, John wants just...
Yeah, just a couple of points of clarification. So that's correct. Brad and I looked at the representation that was made initially by Minehead Town Council and judged that not to be a relevant representation because it didn't comment specifically on the likely effect of the granting of that variation on the licensing objectives. So we advised the town council that they needed to make their comments specific to the impact of that application. And there was just a further point of clarification, if I may, which is to say that all premises that are licensed to supply alcohol for consumption on the premises, whilst they might not, on their license, it might not permit forms of regulated entertainment, because of the amendments made to the Licensing Act, they are in fact allowed to do that. There's been some deregulation, so forms of live music in front of small audiences and such. So it would be lawful for the premises to have forms of entertainment under certain conditions, whether or not they've got that on their license or temporary event notices or not. So it's just a further point of clarification because that did come up.
Thank you, Marcus. Do you want to ask something else?
I think we did touch on deregulated entertainment earlier. I don't think I've had an answer to the question of whether that second submission is an official submission of the town council, but I think we'll leave it as a submission at that, and that's for a later date. I'm just slightly confused of how you managed to have an official submission 2 weeks after without having a meeting. But that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I just make a comment, perhaps to just, oh dear, Minehead Town Council in their submission, as you had said, Councillor Palmer, what was saying about perhaps the hours could be reduced back to 12:30 Sunday to Thursday and 3 a.m. still on the Friday and Saturday. Actually, with the police, who've sort of come to an agreement already, they've agreed 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. for those two specific things, half an hour wind down. So it's not dissimilar to what Minehead Town Council have actually, in the end, asked for. Okay, you can come back to me if you want, Councillor Palmer, but you don't have to. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Right, we'll go now to the summing up, which I'd be grateful if you didn't go over old ground. I did miss Edward out. Sorry, Edward, you had your hand up. I wrote you down and then I forgot about you. So I didn't know if you wanted to say something. You can do your summing up at the same time. We'll put you in first.
Okay, thank you for that opportunity. A couple of things came up in questions which weren't mentioned before. I think are worth just adding in terms of noise control. The question of who controls the noise limits. We haven't talked about noise limiters which are likely to be necessary in this sort of situation. There is a suggestion in this report that even going louder than you'd require it's going to be covered by these measures. I'm not sure about that, but so rather than relying on the insulation to take anything at all, one would expect to see a noise limiter in place, and that's a noise limiter which cuts out the sound system if you go above particular levels, perhaps even in parts of the acoustic spectrum, but not just the absolute level. So that's one thing. Another thing which would be absolutely required is there are predictions made on effectiveness of works, but I would certainly strongly recommend that any grant of permission, any condition requires verification that the measures are successful, given that one is adapting an old building to a new purpose. It needs to be a very thorough work because only a small hole or gap in the sound insulation will let out an awful lot of sound. Yeah, but that's all I wish to add, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. I'll just clarify, a noise limiter, is that similar to a car limiter in so much when it reaches a certain level, it will cut out?
Broadly speaking, yes. They normally be hooked up to the power of the power supply of the music itself, so that if you reach that limit, the control will be the music goes off, and therefore you have a visual feedback normally, so that the person controlling the music can see when they're getting too close.
Thank you very much. That might be something that the applicant wishes to consider. Yeah. Briefly.
We already have one.
Splendid.
No, you don't.
That was brief. That's
sorry, you don't have one. No, you have something that may. Oh, sorry. I'm talking about what I was shown. You may have got something since then. What you have at the moment is a visual representation of noise levels, which is not the same because it doesn't cut the music off when you go over a certain level, but also it's not that sophisticated a device to give you good information.
We'll leave that there, I think. I don't want to. We're really past questions, Marcus. We're on the summing up. We are.
Well,
what do you think?
Clarification.
If you want a clarification, I'll let you.
That was a clarification. So yeah, it's a clarification.
Go on then.
Got you, Michael. So clarification, because obviously, and I'm interpreting that I do know here. You could have a noise clipper that actually reduces the noise. But what you're saying they should have is something that actually cuts the power off. And I wonder whether, in your experience, this is turning to question whether that's actually practical.
So on noise limiters, yes, it is, because it's a sanction which the controller of the sound will want to avoid for obvious reasons. So if you have a display where it's going into the red, say the red dots, then it's very clear that you need to turn it down a little bit. However, noise limiters covers a variety of devices. You can get more sophisticated ones that control the lower frequencies, for example, and they just keep those suppressed all the time. But the fundamental principle of it is well established and works in many, many music venues.
Thank you very much. We'll move on. Other persons invited to sum up if they wish. Does anybody wish to sum up? Young lady at the front, or Mr. or Mrs. Martin?
There was one problem. When the gentleman got planning permission to run the cafe in Blenheim Gardens,
I don't think this is relevant to this
well,
application.
it is, because it's to do with disabled access.
No,
And
No.
he
I'm
broke
sorry,
his,
no, I'm going to stop you there, madam. This is for you to sum up what you've already said,
well, then,
not for you to introduce new matters.
Well-
And planning and disability access is not something that the committee can
well,
consider.
in that case,
So
I
I'm not
will
gonna
go
do it.
back to the safety of people
Which
with vehicles parking on the outside, letting people unload, etc., and families running across the main road. Okay.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the,
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I just clarify one point for the applicants just before they sum up? Mr. Wynne in particular, I'm aware from what the police said that you may have misunderstood what my restriction was at the start of this. You are very welcome to submit any statements and, to make verbal statements at this hearing today. What we have restricted you on is adducing written statements from other people that haven't been submitted prior to today. So you can say whatever you want, and completely, I get you might have written that down to help you remember it. That is absolutely fine. The problem that this committee has is we are not permitted by law, with subject to a small discretion, to hear new evidence that hasn't already been circulated to the other parties. I don't know if that helps in your summing up.
okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't think that was necessarily clear beforehand. Applicant, Mr. Wynne, do you want to sum up, or any of your colleagues?
I think I can pass it over to Rosie Watts and Lorraine Pegler.
Lovely. So this is something that I've written myself. It's not on behalf of anyone else. Okay. So I'm Rosie Watts, speaking on behalf of William Wynne, applicant and proprietor of Cafe Bar 21 in Minehead. I'll present the facts-based overview of this application, and William will address any relevant questions once handed over to him. Our variation revises hours of Sunday to Thursday until 1 o'clock and Friday and Saturday until 3 o'clock for occasional events. After consultations with police, licensing and locals, down from an initial 3 AM daily request, we've added a soundproof function room for events, entertainment, food, wakes, veterans clubhouse, charity fundraisers and community gatherings to meet customer needs and strengthen Minehead's community. In 2024, we used our annual allocation of TENS, resulting in 0 complaints from police or environmental health, with no reports suggesting anyone noticed or objected to our operations under these notices. However, TENS aren't financially viable for our small business. Once we apply and pay for one, we apply and pay once, but if a customer cancels, we incur a loss, doubling to 2 annual TENS if an event passes 12 AM. A single premises can have a maximum of 15 TENS per calendar year or 21 days, whichever comes first, further limiting our allocation. Unlike this variation, TENS require no conditions when applying, such as no soundproofing or SIA door staff. Our licence includes these for safety and compliance. We're committed to the 4 licensing objectives while serving Minehead. Any lapse, especially on noise or nuisance, the focus of representations, could trigger a review. We're working with environmental health. Sorry, it's gone past that bit. We're working with environmental health and acoustics engineer Timothy Sherlock Brown, provisions not only for neighbours but also for William's 82-year-old mother, as this is also the home of William Wynne and Lorraine Pegler, highlighting our dedication. We employ SIA trained door staff, agreed last entry with the police at 11 o'clock Sunday to Thursday and 12 AM Friday and Saturday, and maintain a CCTV with 26 cameras across the premises, with more planned once this permission is granted. Lorraine Pegler chairs Pub Watch and I attend to complete admin, meeting monthly with licensees and police to enhance safety. keeping 50 to 100 locals weekly off the A39, where 4 died and 62 crashed in 2023, the only data available to us, though more up-to-date statistics likely exist but are inaccessible. Our safeguarding policy ensures supervised children at functions and soundproofing keeps noise low. We support veterans, charities and employ locals. Our recent coffee morning on February the 27th of 2025, which we publicly advertised for people to attend to address any concerns, drew 9 members of the public and also 3 members of Minor Town Council. However, no objectors. For any concerns going forward, we advise contacting us direct on our landline or mobile number, which we're happy to distribute, and we'll act swiftly with any concerns. Thank you. That's all from myself.
Thank you, Rosie. You did get your time in the sun. You did get your time in the sun. Lauren. Okay. Thank you very much. Licensing officer, I'm going to ask you to sum up.
Yeah, not really much to add, really. I mean, everything's been considered and heard. I really what I do is just circle back to what I said at the beginning. Really now the 3 possible avenues open to members to consider is either A, granting the license subject to the already agreed amendments suggested by the police. Avenue B would be to reject the application, and Avenue C would be granting the license with the police's amendments and then subject to any conditions that you may feel proportionate, any other amendments to things like hours or anything like that that you feel is proportionate and reasonable to address any concerns you think haven't already been addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You didn't wish to say anything. Okay, so now we come to the stage of the meeting where, in this case, actually, we're going to leave the room to come to a decision. You are welcome to stay. And as I said before, if you choose not to stay, there will be a decision in writing within 5 working days, and you're able to appeal to the Magistrates' Court if applicable within 21 working days. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. If you're not staying, safe journey. How long is a piece of string, Claire? I would hope between half an hour and an hour. Okay. Though Marcus isn't so sure. Thank you everyone for attending. I know some of you come a little way. The Minehead Road isn't the best road, as I well know, but thank you again. Meeting closed. Thank you for your time today. We have reached a decision, and because it's rather lengthy, I'm going to get Alex to read it out.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, everybody, this will come out to you in writing, so don't sort of feel it's quite long, so don't sort of feel you've got to sort of scribble it all down. But this is the decision of the licensing subcommittee on the 21st of March relating to an application by Mr. William Wynne to vary the existing premises licence at Bar 21, 19 to 21 The Avenue, Minehead, Somerset. The original application was submitted to Somerset Council on the 28th of January, but then was subsequently amended by coming to an agreement between the applicant and Avon and Somerset Police on the 25th of February 2025. The amended application seeks to extend the licensable area to include the function room adjoined to the current premises, add licensable activities of the provision of late night refreshment and regulated entertainment, specifically the performance of plays, exhibition of film, indoor sporting events, performance of live music, recorded music and dance, and change the hours for the licensable activities, beg your pardon, from 7 AM to 11 PM Monday to Sunday, to 9 AM to 1 AM Sunday to Thursday, and 9 AM to 3 AM Friday and Saturday, bearing in mind that the 9 AM opening hour only applies to the extended part of the premises. Further, the extended hours of 9 AM to 3 AM will be permitted on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Day, any Sunday preceding a bank holiday, and also on 12 occasions per year where 14 days notice is given to the police and Somerset Council. Prior to the hearing, representations to the application were received from the Environmental Protection Team as a responsible authority defined under the Licensing Act. Those representations raised concerns regarding noise nuisance from both customers and amplified sound. The Environmental Protection Team concluded from a sound test that the function room is not currently capable of preventing noise problems amounting to public nuisance, and that there are nearby residential premises that would be affected. No other responsible authority has made a representation, but it is noted that conditions, some of which have already been mentioned, have been agreed between the applicant and the police. Representations were also received prior to the hearing from residents living in the vicinity of the premises. The local residents, as other persons, raised many objections relating to noise nuisance, in particular relating to music, crowd noise and disturbance from patrons. Other objections raised related to concerns of an increase in antisocial behaviour, intimidating behaviour to passers-by, smashed glass on the avenue, overspill causing fire and safety issues, foul language in the venue that could be heard by children outside of the venue, impact on police resources, disturbance from traffic entering and leaving car parks, the damaging effect on Minehead's reputation, additional pressures on local health services, parking issues and road safety. At today's subcommittee At today's hearing, the subcommittee has heard from the following people: Brad Fear and John Rendell as licensing officers for the authority, Edward Van Dyke, the Environmental Protection Officer, William Wynne and Lorraine Pegler on behalf of the applicant, and I'm so sorry I forgot your name, I will put you in there, Steve and Angela Martin, and Linda Bareham Stanley and Councillor Palmer on behalf of Minehead Town Council. The subcommittee has also taken into account written evidence from anyone who had sent in representations but did not attend the hearing or did not wish to speak. All written submissions have been considered. Legally, the subcommittee has addressed the provisions of the Licensing Act 2003, which confer the powers of the authority to deal with the application, the obligation to promote the 4 licensing objectives, the existence of other statutory provisions such as environmental protection legislation and Antisocial Behaviour Act, and the relevant sections of the Council Statement of Licensing Policy and Statutory Guidance. The Licensing Subcommittee has considered that it must carry out its functions with a view to promoting the 4 licensing objectives. The Licensing Subcommittee cannot take into account representations which do not relate to one or more of those objectives, and further acknowledges that any representations must be relevant and evidence-based. It further acknowledges that when making decisions to refuse or restrict applications, the evidence it receives must specifically relate to the premises, which is the subject of the application. This means that the subcommittee is aware it cannot consider representations which do not specifically relate to the licensing objectives. In this application, this means that comments concerning planning breaches, concerns about reputational damage to Minehead, general antisocial behaviour which cannot be traced back to the premises, police resources and resources on local health service have not been considered. The licensing objective relating to the protection of children from harm does not relate to children generally within the local area, only to those who are within the premises. Therefore, the representations regarding shouting and swearing being overheard by children in the street cannot be considered. Equally, submissions relating to the security of a car park or of being able to park in the car park are not relevant unless they relate to a possible public nuisance. No reports of parking being a nuisance have been brought forward. The subcommittee has heard the following submissions made at today's hearing, and this is in no particular order, this is just how we've dealt with them. The subcommittee values the expert opinion of the Environmental Protection Officer and notes the concern that the premises as it is not capable of containing noise. The EPO is concerned that this is a noise-sensitive premises and significant works are required to make the area in which the applicant wishes to hold functions adequate to protect from noise nuisance. The EPO has also stated that as well as actual works, there are matters to be addressed around how the premises as a whole is managed to alleviate noise nuisance. Notwithstanding that, the EPO has recognised that the applicant has had helpful and useful discussions with him and appears to be keen to work with the council to resolve the outstanding issues. The EPO has confirmed that the team have not received any complaints from local residents concerning noise. The applicants themselves have stated that they are keen to work with responsible authorities to ensure that their premises follows best practice. They have no desire to operate a nightclub and are looking to provide a venue that they believe is missing from the local area. They keep full records of how noise is managed within the premises and are happy to provide a telephone number for local residents to report concerns. Since meeting with the Environmental Protection Officer, they have engaged an acoustic expert who has made recommendations of works that could be done, including installing double glazing, extra panelling and soundproofing doors. They're happy to take on such works, but state they do need time to complete them. The applicants have also confirmed that they are happy for the additional conditions agreed with the police to be imposed on the licence, and that the additional area of the function room is intended to have a slightly later opening time than the remainder of the premises. The committee is aware that there have been several other persons making representations, and those made in writing prior to the hearing have been considered. The subcommittee has noted the concerns about how noise levels will be monitored and enforced in the event that anything agreed is breached. It was accepted by the other persons that the avenue where the premises is located is generally noisy from other premises who have licences to open into the early hours of the morning. The other persons believe that the bulk of the noise comes from the premises. However, the subcommittee has noted that these reports are not backed by specific details of incidents or times when customers from this premises might be creating a public nuisance. The subcommittee is aware of concerns around noise and behaviour at the premises. They are particularly mindful of the comments of the Environmental Protection Officer and his concerns around the amount of work that would need to be done in order to make the premises suitable to guard against noise pollution. The subcommittee has considered whether it would have been more sensible for the applicants to undertake all those works required prior to making this application. However, it takes on board the statements of the applicants that they are seeking to resolve all outstanding issues and asking for time to complete such works within the granting of this application. The subcommittee has considered the representations made by the Town Council and the local residents. Whilst it is sympathetic to residents who feel they live very close to premises which cause noise, it is very aware that the law allows premises to open and operate without conditions unless evidence exists that would do so would undermine the licensing objectives. Whilst a fair amount of anecdotal reports have been mentioned today, there is in reality very little evidence to suggest that the premises is either currently undermining the licensing objectives or that to grant the variation subject to conditions would do so. The police have not objected to the application once the conditions have been agreed, and although Environmental Protection raised concerns, the EPO has not said the application should be refused. The subcommittee, therefore, is willing to trust the applicants to deliver on their promises, asking that they continue to work closely in full cooperation with the police and Environmental Protection. Therefore, on the evidence before it, having considered all the circumstances, the subcommittee grants the application to vary the premises licence as amended, with additional conditions as agreed with the police as set out in Appendix 5 of the papers. In addition, the subcommittee considers it appropriate to impose the following additional conditions. The first one is that there shall be no regulated entertainment after 11 o'clock at night with music and amplified sound prior to the submission of and approval by the licensing authority of a noise impact assessment undertaken by a suitably qualified person and a suitable noise management plan aiming to restrict amplified sound and customer noise, and further that any works to mitigate such noise pollution, whether set out in those documents or otherwise required by the licensing authority further to consideration of the same, have been successfully completed. The second condition is that the premises licence holder shall provide to local residents a dedicated telephone number which can be used by them to report complaints to the premises. The subcommittee gives delegated authority to the licensing officer to amend the existing premises licence to give effect to this decision. And the subcommittee advises other persons that if they feel noise is excessive, their best option is to contact the applicant and to keep channels of communication open. In addition, the other persons are advised to report incidents to Environmental Protection at Somerset Council, as well as keeping records of any concerns. Parties are reminded there are rights of appeal against this decision pursuant to Section 181 of the Licensing Act. An appeal must be made to the Magistrates Court and commence within 21 days of notification of decision. And parties are further reminded of the procedures contained within the Act relating to the review of premises licences. This provision permits nearby residents, businesses or responsible authorities to apply for a review of a premises licence where problems with one of the licensing objectives are occurring. The subcommittee reminds all parties that for any review to go ahead, evidence would need to be collected of incidents occurring that undermine the licensing objectives. Yep.
Thank you, Alex. So basically it's agreed subject to various conditions. Thank you everybody for your time today. It's been quite a long subcommittee today, but we thought it might be. But thank you for your time and a safe journey home.